I'ma make the stacks blow, rolling smoke out my nose, leaning on the console.
It's good to hearing that on a Monday, huh?
That's right, man. That's
Normally
right.
we're on here on Friday.
Getting it this week,
and
dude.
then we're getting on a Monday, and like, I'm so glad we have on who we have on. In any other world, this would be like our principal showing up, like Monday, ready for school. It's our principal, and normally I try to make fun of whoever we have on. Like, I'll throw some jabs out there because they're still on mute, but we don't make fun of this guy. Because this guy is the CEO of the best real estate company on the planet.
That's
right. And he could probably remove me from this planet, right, with everything that he knows. But today we're super excited. We've got the CEO of eXp Realty on. Obviously, we've been at eXp for a long time. We're super proud, super fortunate to be here. There's a lot of great things that they're doing, but who better than to tell that story in addition to his own? Leo Pareja. How are you, brother?
I'm doing wonderful. Thanks for having me.
Did I pause for effect okay to like make sure I pronounce that last name right?
Nailed it.
You got it. You nailed it. I've been called substantially worse.
The only thing I was concerned about was like rolling that R. I'm like, I still got the like, what do you call it? Like regular white guy, white trash, whatever you call me, right? Like just Midwest white. Like I can't roll that R. And I'm so glad I didn't have to, but super stoked, man. And Leo, I think the biggest reason why we want to have you on is understanding like where real estate's going, right? We're going to get into your story and where you started. I know you were with REMINE for a while, and I've picked a couple people's brains just on some of your story. I'd rather hear it from you, but I think what agents are really eager for now, in addition to just NAR, right? Because let's just get this out of the way. It was 2008, you had a housing market crash per se, right? I'm using quotes because open for interpretation. 2008, not fun. Then you had COVID, scary, not fun. Then you had post-COVID, and what the heck was that? Then you had interest rates, and then we had last year. It was nationally like a slower year than 2008. It wasn't a housing crash, but like less homes sold last year than 2008, right? Then it's like NAR, and it's like if agents haven't figured out, it's like, look, it's always something, right? So when we're talking about it, it's like, oh my God, NAR, and what's going to happen? And it's like, it's kind of like when people are surprised it snows in Colorado in April. And it's like, guys, every year we go through this, like there's always weather. It's in, and like with entrepreneurship, if you're approaching real estate and your real estate business as an agent or a team, it's entrepreneurship and there's always something. So we're not going to dive into like NAR specifically today and how to adapt. But what I do want to dive into with Leo as we kind of get through a story is, where is real estate going? And how are you building your brand and your business and incorporating technology and the right people in your corner as far as like creating a successful future in real estate, regardless of circumstance or season and the unpredictables that happen, if that's appropriately said, Leo?
No, I like that. As you were talking, the quote that comes to mind is a Gary Vaynerchuk quote that says, entrepreneurship is a contact sport, right? Mm-hmm. This is more like the UFC than boxing. There is no undisputed anything, right? If you do entrepreneurship for any prolonged period of time, it's just a matter of when you take an L versus if you take an L.
Right.
And it's part of the journey, right? You can't experience the good without the bad, right? The highs without the lows, because it gives you context and it gives you appreciation. And I love the name of your podcast and the concept. And I get feedback that most people are surprised, they're refreshed when I speak, because I'm very comfortable talking about my losses. I think, especially in this new social media world we all live in, most people only see your representative. And it's not good for people's mental health to just think that they're the only ones suffering, right? Because everyone's putting forth the curated version of their experience. And so I think when you actually are authentic, and this goes for agents building their businesses, the more authentic you come across with your customers, the probably faster you can build rapport and be able to build connection. Because I think in a world where everything feels fake, genuine connection is what we crave.
100%. And I feel agents are starting to figure out like what works, what doesn't. Like the exciting part about where we're going now is, I think the last 2 years allowed mildly interesting average agents to look and feel more successful at it than they are when you have 2% interest rates, right? I feel like the water was muddy when it came to that. And like now we're pioneering into like a different phase. And just speaking of pioneering into that, like Leo, what's your story with that? What's your background? Like, what brought you to tech, or what brought you to real estate? Like, where did that start for you? Or if you'd like to, what brought you to entrepreneurship? You know, were you like Eli, getting homeschooled in his basement, like building Napster? Or like, by the way, he got a D from his mom getting homeschooled. I always have to throw that out there, right?
Hey, she was strict, man.
But Leo, what was your start with like entrepreneurship and or just real estate specifically, as far as like how that came about?
So I feel like I have the unique distinction. I've never had a job until this one. This is my first job, so I hope I'm doing okay with it.
That's awesome.
But I got into entrepreneurship super early. I was accidentally born and raised into the real estate industry, not by family, but by choice. I went to college in the year 2000 to go into tech. I was going to build websites. And that was the first huge economic bubble I witnessed collapse, right? For us of this age, you know, we're very familiar with the financial crisis, but the tech bubble of 99 and 2000 was epic, right? It was a massive destruction of resources in this country. And I was in college during that time, hoping to get a job when I graduated, and that disappeared completely. While I was in college, and I read a book that changed the course of my life, which a lot of us had that aha moment, which was Kiyosaki's Rich Dad Poor Dad. I got obsessed with real estate. I found a mentor. Short version of the story is I wired a stranger all my money. And I went into an in-depth coaching program that taught me about the psychology of sales. And I got obsessed with how the human mind works, how people make emotional decisions to justify them logically. By my senior year of college, I did $306,000 in GCI as a full-time student. And by the time I was 24, I had an accountant tell me I was worth $5 million, had 14 properties. I was the youngest KW broker inside of the system as a principal broker. And then 2008 happened. And it was the most visceral experience of my life, which I'm grateful I had no spouse or kids. Yeah. Because, you know, at least the ass whooping was by myself. And I lost everything. I gave it all back to the bank. I learned how to do short sales on myself. Lots of humble pie, which I think a 24-year-old making that kind of money needed. And once the boogers were dry, I started asking wiser people who lived before me what to do. And I was able to learn from the past, and, you know, what happened in 08 happened in 92. And, you know, there's success leaves clues. And I was able to get into the REO business before everybody else did. And by the year 2010, I was the number one KW agent team in the world by size. So I, you know, the first time when I started with nothing was just kind of hard work. And I would say I was slightly better than the average in my market. But the second time around, it was way more of a student of niches and systems and processes. And as I built that business, I saw an opportunity when Dodd-Frank went into effect and TRID and all the changes in lending. I started a hard money lending business that became a very large-scaled private capital enterprise where we sold debt directly to Wall Street. And as I was building that, I needed public record data. And I called a couple of companies that own public record. They quoted me too much money. I ended up competing in a hackathon put on by Zillow, and I accidentally built the first version of REMINE. Ended up raising $48 million in private equity, scaled it to 80% coverage of the U.S., and exited both those businesses, moved to South Florida, mostly to go spearfishing, when Glenn Sanford called me and asked me to join on the rocket ship. So I thought I was done with organized real estate, but I guess you don't leave this business ever.
Yeah.
And for those that might not be familiar, can you give us just the cliff notes on REMINE, what it is, what its function is, how it assists agents, et cetera, et cetera? Yeah.
It was born out of a need of eating my own dog food. I wanted, you know, one place to get all sorts of data. So REMINE, you know, conflated about 26 different data sets, from public record to consumer to contact information. You can log into a map-based search and draw a polygon and visualize any kind of data you want, which was the first of its kind.
The one thing I want to key in on as well is the disruptive part, right? Like, I feel like you would consider yourself an industry disruptor. At least I do. And I want to go into like your knowledge of tech and what you went to school for. And like, at what point when you were going through real estate, you're taking your hits, right? And you're taking your lumps and you're learning how to short sale some things. And as you kind of come out of this and you're growing your team at Keller Williams, and as you're scaling, as you're growing, like obviously a lot of us, as we grow, we kind of hit certain ceilings and we're like, we need resources, i.e. more people, more staff, more technology, more whatever it may be. Like, where did that tech side really start taking off for you as far as like when you started running into these ceilings and that the chapter for the next growth and your knowledge of like, man, the team kind of needs this, or I could really use this. Like, where did that tech knowledge really start to help you? And then where did it take off as far as like probably being the biggest thing that you are in real estate, which is that tech side?
So the funny thing is I don't see myself as a tech guy.
Okay.
Like in my version of myself, I'm just a real estate guy at heart. I love real estate. I love the transactional part. I like every piece of it. I've sold it. I've built it. I financed it. Like if I can do it in real estate, I've probably tried at least once. So in my heart, I'm very much a tech person, and I actually don't see myself as a disruptor. And the reason is the definition. To me, a disruptor is normally from the outside coming to fix something broken, versus for me, it's always been innovating as a industry insider. I've actually said it on speeches and stuff like, I'm not a technologist trying to fix us. I actually think what we do is amazing. And I just wanted to get us better tools as someone who actually understood it, right? I feel like most software built for us are by tech people that don't have a damn clue what we do every day.
Correct.
So to me, it's a big distinction. And then, I've always seen technology as a tool to compress time and accelerate process, right? Even probably not sure if I've ever said this on a podcast, but that's how I got so good at REO. When I say I built, I had someone build me stuff to make me go faster, right? So the old school, Fannie and Freddie systems, you had to log in and hit refresh. And I had somebody write me a protocol that scraped it real time and sent me an email. So I didn't have to check. And then I would be able to respond inside of an email format and then read and write back to their system. And so what would normally take 2 or 3 people to hit refresh, I could do for my email. And so I've always approached everything of like, well, that doesn't make sense. How can I make it faster? How can I make it better? How can I keep it in one place?
So it's almost like you have an emphasis in tech. It's like you're a practitioner at heart and by trade, but you've got this emphasis in tech that allows you to contextually understand where you can close the gaps in real estate to be more effective.
So I'll tell you what Glenn said, because when he again approached me, he wanted me to be in the tech side, and I actually said I'm not that interested in that. I can do it. I can play one on TV, but I don't actually enjoy it because I can't read tech. I can't read code.
Right.
And I think that's just it creates almost a level of insecurity, right? So in real estate, I mean, I read the 198 pages of the NAR settlement, and I can actually debate it with very detail as to what's coming. But if a system goes down and I look at the raw code, I don't know if that's in Node or JSON or Python. I can't read it. But I actually understand what most languages do and the differences and the limitations. So I know enough to be dangerous, but I feel where I can normally bridge the gap is I understand enough to translate the real estate to tech folks. And that's the part that I don't think most people can bridge.
Which is super unique. Being able to talk to tech people and to realtors all at the same time, almost like just bridging that gap of communication, which is cool. And I can't let you say you read 198 pages of it and be as smart as you are and at least not get your opinion on what's to come.
Yeah. So again, I'm super tactical with everything in life. When someone says X happened, I'm like, okay, so what is going to happen and when, right? So the couple of things, the unilateral offer of compensation is going away. So it's no longer guaranteed. It's now to be negotiated and should be treated like a credit. So I always try to tie things to context, right? Context is probably my favorite word in the English language. And so I have a t-shirt in the other room that I'll probably wear one of these podcasts that says, treat your buyers like you treat your sellers. Again, I think people read a headline and freak out instead of tying it to context that they understand. And I just tell every agent who's confused at what's coming is just pretend you're going on a listing appointment from now on.
Yeah.
Expect it to be competitive, right? Meaning they're interviewing a couple of realtors. show up with a presentation that identifies what services you're willing to offer for what fee you're willing to accept, right? None of us show up to listing appointment and kind of wing it and say, we'll see what happens,
Correct.
right? You say, I'm going to do X, listings in the MLS, lockbox, sign in the ground, professional photos, drone video. You offer a menu of services in exchange for the fee you're willing to accept. And again, I have no opinion as to what that fee could be. It could be a percentage, it could be a flat fee. And normally if it's a lower fee, there's less services attached to it than when it's a higher fee with more services attached to it. There's different customers you serve, like an institutional seller, like a home builder, needs a lot less and they'll pay you a lot less than a first time seller or someone downsizing who hasn't gone through the process and needs a lot more handholding. So that's the crux of it, right? Just know you're going to need an agreement signed every single time. You're going to have to identify your value proposition and get it locked up ahead of time. What I say to people is exactly what you opened with. This too shall pass. Something always happens. And the transaction count you referenced is the floor. And if we look back over a 30-year period, 4 million is about the lowest we've had since 1995, again in 08, again in 2023, and I fully expect it in 2024. The high water mark is 7 million, roughly 7 million, right? And that happened in 2021, in 2006, and a couple other times. And that amount of transactions is a math problem between household formation and demand, number of available units for sale, and cost of financing, right? So the low water mark is 4, the high water mark is 7. But the good news is that there is a floor. Unlike other assets like institutional bonds, equities, income producing property, people have to move because we store human beings in residential real estate. We fall in love, we make little people, more space, less space, death, divorce, and a couple of promotions along the way dictate 80-90% of residential moves. Nobody wakes up and says rates are perfect today, I'm going to move. So I need more space, I need less space, I got a new job, I'm going to live with this person, no, I'm no longer going to live with this person, dictate most of the moves.
100%. And there's always you also have to just understand how to find the benefits and things. And when interest rates are a little bit higher, we've talked about it, like if you can afford certain things, you might have more opportunity to see the inventory that's on. But what I love about what you just said is this is something that we try to be really good at, for myself, from the Marine Corps and being a part of the infantry and being a part of some of the best leaders on the planet, to being attached to special operations for a little while and also seeing some of the best leaders on the planet. What they were so great at was taking complex things and making it simplistic. And I feel like great leaders do that. Like when you're looking at like a Marine Corps infantryman, hey, what matters to you on the battle space, and how do we make you successful versus getting stuck in the weeds with what 3- and 4-star generals are talking about at the Pentagon? And it's not that the Pentagon doesn't matter. Things tend to come from the top down. But by the time it gets to your squad leader, team leader, point man, contextually only so much matters to how the heck is he going to operate in a battle space and come home? And what are we going to do to make sure that him and his brothers are safe and effective? That's what matters. That's what we're talking about. And it's not because they're not at the pay grade to speak to higher. It just doesn't matter. And like in Leo, when you're talking about such a simplistic concept within such a convoluted, sticky lawsuit that's got a bunch of loose ends all over the place. It's like, cool, but what does it matter to the troops out on the street representing their clients and taking care of business regardless of market? And it's, when you break it down to be so simplistic, another word for that would be effective, right? So, man, much appreciated for your 2 cents on that, because it's a great sign of great leadership when they can take something so complex, create some simplicity around it for the troops to still go out, hear what they need to hear, and become effective, right? So appreciate your 2 cents on that. And when it comes to your position now, I know we've kind of talked about your story for a little bit, and we've only got you for a limited time today. Now that you've got a real job, quote unquote, right? Like now that you got a job, what is being CEO of eXp Realty? What does that consist of? What's your vision of that position? And what are the biggest things that we're doing moving forward to create a better experience for realtors and for clients?
So I describe my job in a simple sentence, which is to make being at eXp better than not being at eXp, right? And so we serve multiple avatars. And again, from a leadership standpoint that you can kind of relate, I need to make it being here to sell 12 homes just as awesome as being the number one agent in the world in multiple markets. So, I view eXp as a platform to allow real estate entrepreneurs to build whatever size dream they want. Purely selling homes, if you choose to build communities with us, so I would say the first 2 years I was here, my obsession was operational excellence. And by the way, that's not changing, right? So we went through some hyper growth through COVID and all those things. And we just got to make sure at the end of the day, we respond to your broker questions super fast, that I pay you the day of settlement, that we make selling homes as frictionless as possible, right? I'm talking to you on my Apple laptop, my AirPods, my phone, and my watch are sitting right there, and I have my AirPods in. I don't choose Apple products because I'm a Steve Jobs fanboy. I choose it because the ecosystem makes doing things easier than not doing things. So, simple is not easy. And I just like to focus on that first because above all, we're a real estate brokerage and we're here to make you selling homes for your customers a no-brainer. I would say that in the short term, my immediate focus is on making sure that agents understand, first of all, that I'm one of you. We have the most unique leadership team in the space because every one of us sold real estate. That's the fact that that's not the standard is crazy to me. But Glenn was a super team. I was a highly productive team. Michael sold homes at scale. Wendy Forsythe, that just joined us as a CMO, was a broker owner, ran Royal LePage, went on to run several different companies in the space. I just think it's different when we get what your guys' life is like because that was our life. And so my North Star is your experience and making sure that if something doesn't make sense, one is you can reach out to me and I can either go, you're right, that doesn't make sense. Let me figure out how to make that better. Or I can say, well, I know that doesn't make sense, but let me tell you why we can't change the rules or we can't add that process. Right. And I think that there's a more mutual respect that comes from someone who's actually done it and understands the process. But I think that we will continue seeing, I've been in a very public kind of forum for over a decade, and I've been talking about the rise of the super team for 10 years, right? If you take my first year in real estate in 2002, the biggest team in the country were doing 200-300 deals a year, which by the way, to me was unfathomable.
Right.
Now teams do 2,000 deals a year. And I see that for a couple of reasons. One is kind of the rise of technology and how much it speeds things up. I've been doing real estate long enough where you had to press hard on the white, pink, and yellow sheets and fax it. Now we hit enter. The property gets syndicated to portals. You can schedule a showing online and then write the offer on, Dot Loop or Skyscanner in front of the property and present it digitally. Right. So just the speed at which the data is distributed and you can schedule a showing and present an offer is sped things up. But now we don't have borders, right? So we have teams. Our number one team in the U.S. last year, Avery Call, operates in 21 markets, right? It's 68 people. And it's super focused on a niche, right? She's the short-term shop and sells short and long-term rentals, and that's her specialty. And so with technology, your sales funnel is the whole country, is the whole world now. She can do a YouTube video or a podcast and attract consumers in multiple markets and serve them in multiple markets, right? So I feel like your digital footprint and your, we live in a world where you were interviewed 2 or 3 times before you actually had the first phone call, which is pretty cool. Yeah. Right. So again, short game. I referenced Gary Vee earlier, but there's another quote that I like that's you got to be in the dirt and the clouds, right? So I'm thinking 2 years out and tomorrow. Right. So agents right now need to be calling every single person they put into a home 2 years ago in the last 2 years and interviewing them what they loved about the buyer representation experience they had. And you need to be on purpose asking buyers to write reviews explaining that, right? Like, Will was amazing in a multiple contract situation where we beat out other people, not by escalating, but by offering different terms like a rent back and things. He educated me on the process. He was able to get my closing costs paid down. He educated me on how I could use a seller concession to buy down my rate to 5.5%. Like, there's things that we actually do that we take completely for granted because they're mundane and normal to us. But like, that's your superpower. Right? It's that expert guidance, that your 10,000 hours of practice that are, monstrous.
It's like taking everything we do that we're great at and remembering that you got to create content out of that, whether it's reviews, things that you can have through social media, and there's self-promotion involved, but it's like no one else is going to do that for you. Like, if you can't find a way to identify your value to the masses and to your consumers, like it's going to be hard to stay in front. And what I love about some things you're talking about, how you started with the dirt first, and not sure if you know too much about my past. I kind of mentioned it a second ago with being attached to special operations, being in the infantry for a long time. That's what I geek out on, is leadership. And when you're talking about the dirt, I super appreciate that, because it's like you don't have to over romanticize success and where it comes from. And I remember going through a school, I think it was designated marksman school, super difficult school that's hard to get into in the military, in the Marine Corps. And I remember above the door on your way out of the classroom, it said, high speed is being brilliant at the basics, right? Now, young Will was like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, you worked so hard to get to these schools and be this high speed dude. But once you started going through that school and you start realizing like how many basic fundamentals coincide with being an operator, and the concept of just being brilliant beyond rapport, regardless of circumstance, at every basics required of you as an operator, if you can do that beyond rapport, regardless of circumstance, you are high speed. You're super high speed. And what you're talking about right now is it's fundamentally being sound. And hey, no matter where we're going, let's make sure this experience and these operations that we have set in place are fundamentally sound and they execute, and I really gravitate to that, because it's just not having to, again, overly romanticize shiny object syndrome in order to create the facade of success or to make success sound attractive to people to join. It's like, no, man, like, let's not romanticize it. Let's just let success be what it is. And it's foundational at its pure. And that mixed with, regardless of your ambition level and what you want to make here at eXp, here's what we're going to allow you to create as far as your experience being here. And I love that, because it reminds you of kind of like no agent left behind, right? Just same thing like in the Marine Corps, right? Like no Marine left behind.
Well, when you were talking there, the thought that came to my head, though, is, to actually succeed, though, you have to be obsessed with the craft, right? So,
yeah.
We just talked about, how I view the world from this side, but from the agent side, what do you do at your core? And then, how much have you studied it? How many courses have you taken? Like, I've spent real money on pure negotiation classes where I was the only real estate professional in the room and the other people were like trading commodities. And we do exercises where it's like, hey, this is what you need to pay per unit, and this is, you better sell above that. And then it was binary who won or lost that negotiation. And so, as an agent, as you need to rebuild that value proposition for the buy side, when I used to list homes, I would walk into a listing appointment with a cash offer from a real investor. And I would show them a settlement statement that shows that we would sell, this is what it would sell for without an agent. This is what it would sell for on the MLS as is. This is what it would sell for on the MLS fully repaired. And here are two bids from reputable contractors. And at that point, I don't think I came across as a commodity. I came across as an expert, right? Who was able to navigate where they didn't need to go in elsewhere. It didn't matter which form of execution they wanted. One was quick and painless and had less money. The other one would probably take 6 months and you'd have to live with a renovation, right? But the net difference was their decision to make. But I really came across as that expert guide who knew what I was talking about and was no longer a commodity and was more of a value partner add.
Where do you think agents missed the mark on that, right? Like if we were asking you almost like from your past and your experience all the way to now to just run like a review, like a social experiment, like you think agents lack ambition? You think agents lack discipline? You think agents lack clarity and path? Not to just pigeonhole it to just those three. And we've got a couple hundred agents with us now, and some of them like really want to work hard and they've got the ambition. Sometimes they just need some path, and we find those. The majority, it's like, man, there's so much of an abundance of knowledge and resources. Just like if you look at, even if we take this outside of real estate, there's a gym on every block in America. And if you were to ask the average person where a gym's at, they can locate it. If you ask the average person, what a workout should look like, they can give you a decent description. If you were to ask the average person, what you should eat or not eat, they can even do pretty good at that. So it's not so much of like, in my opinion, not knowing what to do. They could even describe it for others and tell others what to do at a moderately effective rate. It's getting themselves to do it, right? And it's like, man, where does that come from? Is it lack of their own vision? Is it discipline? Is it what like, is there any experience you have, Leo, where you've just ran like your own social experiment as far as like where the gap is?
So I would replace the word agent with human beings.
Cool.
And at scale, we're average, right? So, as I built software, I had my very first like large scale experience with that, where a lot of us who are high performers, we live in an echo chamber of other high performers. And so I learned that at scale, most people prefer a painkiller to a vitamin. And I use that analogy in product building and systems building and service building, where human beings at scale just prefer the immediate pain relief, right? And you can apply that to anything, right? So in real estate, that turns into like, I'll pay a 40% referral fee for a lead.
Yep.
Instead of willing to do the vitamin workout regimen, which is create a farm and prospect consistently and create content, drip, 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 drip. And then you have high margin, high quality, predictable business that's not dependent on a third party. And so I would say that at scale, humans want you just used the example of eating right and workout and everything else. I read a stat recently, I don't know if it's accurate, that like 8% of the US population is on Ozempic, right? Like that's the easy button.
That's crazy.
Versus eating right. Like a caloric deficit is if you want to lose weight.
Yep.
Like consume less calories than you burn.
Yep.
And I think that applies to anything, right? So humans evolved over a long time to avoid pain. And now we live in a society where avoiding pain and creating pleasure is rather easy. And so, at scale, what I've learned is the folks who choose to be uncomfortable or be disciplined are the ones that succeed at a high level. And I feel that I see that across all forms of life on this planet.
Right. So with your position in leadership and just where you're at now, what do you focus on or what do you cater to when it comes to acquiring agents and creating a better experience for agents? Is it a little bit of both where you got to give agents what they want in order to give them what they need? Like we hear that in marketing, right? Like, hey, give people what they want so you can give them what they need. Like, I guess the most common form of saying that is clickbait, right? Like, or do you just cater to fundamentally what makes people successful and you just understand, let the cards fall where they may and attract the right culture and just let the ones, because I guess like for me personally, when people talk about agents and we hear a lot of it at the local level and oh man, not every agent's going to make it or this or that. And it's like, guys, not everybody is supposed to make it. Like I played 5 minutes of pro baseball. And then every time I think of it, Leo, I always say it's probably more like 3 minutes, right? Like, but there was things about me as a youngster and not being prepared for certain things that then led to a decision. And I remember being on a podcast before and they were trying to dissect baseball for me and rationalize it. And I just kind of stopped them during the podcast. And I said, I don't want to rationalize it. I don't want to come to a place of like, well, yeah, but maybe I wouldn't have been that good, or, you could always get injured. So who knows how far you would have gone. And, it's really hard to get to that pro level and be like Mike Trout. And that would be rationalizing, some things that you just didn't do very well that led to you leaving that opportunity. And I don't want to rationalize it. I kind of like that it pisses me off. I kind of like that I got a scab that I got to pick every once in a while, because that's what allows me to go full circle in everything else that I do, from the Marine Corps to mercenary work, to police work, to real estate. The fact that I didn't do it somewhere led to my perspective of the importance of going a mile deep in what I do now. So I like the fact that I didn't, and maybe real estate is going to be that for some people, right? Like, people don't change until it's too painful not to. And then your barometer of that pain is subjective to you, right? Like, you see that in relationships or marriages or friendships, and people keeping people around too long, who knows? But the point is, like, not every agent's going to make it through this or through the next thing. And we know that. So why do some people cater to the ones that probably should fall off and not make it? If that makes sense, Leo.
It does. And I think part of it is just, through your journey. I remember I used to get really mad in my early 20s when my friends didn't understand the opportunity that, I could be presenting them. And then I feel as I've gotten older, I've much more taken a path of having a lot more grace for people, that they're in their own season and their own journey. Look, I want to build the best platform on the planet to support real estate entrepreneurs. And if that means you're only selling 10 homes, I have just as much respect as the people doing 800 transactions, as long as, it falls within the rules of legal, ethical, and compliance. Where I think I would answer that question is, I choose who I give my time to very carefully.
Yeah.
Right. So, I love pouring into people, but, just based on my aligned mindset, I like to pour into people that are growing or are on that journey. If somebody's calling to complain about something, I may take that call once or twice, but I won't prioritize that person over someone who's growing and on their journey to level up, because I enjoy that part of that, of the human experience. And so I think it's also just, being okay with people choosing their own path, understanding your business model and building a business model that allows for what you're looking for, right? You don't have to be all things to all people. You could build a team or an organization that's highly productive. And I've seen other people successfully build a farm team, to give you a baseball analogy, that gets people to higher production. So, I invite always people to have a very introspective way of looking at life and understanding how you're wired, what gives you energy, what gets you excited, who are the people you want to be in relationship and in conversation with, and then building a world that revolves around that. I would warn everybody to avoid any energy vampires, right? And build systems and processes around that. And then again, as far as I know, this is a very limited experience we have on this planet. I try to be around people I enjoy sharing conversations with. And if you're around people that aren't putting you in a good mood and draining your energy, I think you have an answer right there as to what systems you should build. But I also remind everybody, I was once an agent who had sold 0 homes, and so were you. So, yep. I also would invite you to create an opportunity to find that next diamond in the rough that may have only sold a couple homes and may look like they don't have what it takes yet.
That's why it's so cool, like these social platforms, right? Facebook, Instagram, podcasting, for goodness sake, right? Like, because it allows you to scale all of your content or your conversations like we're having today. And there could be agents that listen to this that are doing no deals yet, or 1 or 2 deals, and it gives them some context to go out and perform and then show up and go, hey, thank you. Like we've thanked Gary Vee. We've been on the Andy Frisella's podcast. He allowed us to be on his podcast one year, and we were listening to those guys for years, just applying what they were talking about. And you're like, man, the fact that these dudes put that much content out, and it is so helpful to the ones that are like actually go-getters. 1, it's appreciative. 2, it's like part of our motivator on why we try to do these ourselves, is like, how can we pay it forward even at our moderate level, to the next guy. And I love that. And I know we've got like 8 minutes left before we got to let Leo go. Leo, I'm going to bless you, man, because you've had to listen to me. We're going to let Eli in his smart brain.
Oh boy.
Ask it. I always take over the conversations, Leo, and then he just gets to sit back there and like hit buttons. And I feel like
I know
he's just
I'm the
getting- he's
Jamie.
just
I'm the
getting out
Jamie of
easy.
the group. Well, Leo, yeah, just to man, before we part ways here, I'm curious, because you weren't an outsider to the industry, but you were not within eXp before coming over and being CEO, correct? And I'm curious.
No, I was
Or
here,
you
I
were-
was here for 2 years.
Oh, you were here for 2 years. I'm sorry about that.
like what made his move, right?
So before you came over, and then while you were here but not CEO, as an outsider to the CEO position, what did you see where you're like, man, like, did you have those, hey, if they had this moment, or hey, if I were sitting in that seat, this is the sort of things that I would bring to eXp? What did that look like for you coming from the outside before you were in this position?
Yeah. When Glenn asked me to join the leadership team, I actually told him, I said, I've never had a job, so I don't know that I know how to act in corporate America.
Yeah.
And I've only had the founder CEO hat my entire life 3 times, and that I've exited. And Glenn said, that's exactly why I want you sitting next to me, because, as a company gets big, natural human behavior of hierarchy and bureaucracy kick in. And his exact description to me was, when you get here, break anything that doesn't make sense. So I just kind of ran around asking questions of, why did we do this way? Why do we do it that way? And I never asked to be CEO. So it was, I think, more around a reaction to the NAR and just stepping up and being a leader, where Glenn said, I think the time is now. So, I've always operated of like, if it doesn't make sense, why are we doing it? And constantly questioning and everything. Just the answer in my leadership journey that I'll never accept is, we're doing this because that's how we do things, right? Like, I think everything should be questioned on a semi-regular basis, because technology changes, process change, demands of the market change. And so I think you should always stay in curiosity, right? Like, is there a better way? Is there a more efficient way? Is there a new type of software or protocol that didn't exist 2 years ago that we should look at? And so, again, for me, it's making sure that we're operationally ready for what's next, but also staying a pioneer. I want to see us double and then double again, right? We invented a category. Glenn invented a category. And I think we're just getting warmed up.
I love that. I've got 2 more questions for you that we can pack into 5 minutes really quick. I get a lot of conversations from, being a leader back in the military. And, there's a romantic setting to that nowadays post just the generation that we just went through. And believe it or not, I actually feel like it's almost harder to lead within, I don't want to call it corporate America, but just with civilians, right? Like, one attribute we had in the military was, prior to going on deployments, you do your 90-day workups, and we called it training scared. As in, Marines were training scared. There was this element of reality toward, we're going on deployment soon. It's not if, it's when now, correct? And there was just a certain layer of motivation that came with fear. Guys were asking more questions. Guys were training longer. Guys were more present while we were training. And it's almost like nitrous on the motor, having that fear, being able to train Marines that had the inevitable in front of them. And a lot of times, like, as I came back to like the civilian sector, no one's dying. So it's almost harder to incentivize or motivate or get folks to hit a certain level of adequacy, because they're absent that fear. Do you feel like NAR and some of these other market changes kind of like somewhat create that? Or is there any times where you see certain types of leadership or influence become just more useful than others from your perspective, Leo, as far as how to effectively lead people? Like, is there any relation to fear or absent fear when it comes to your role with leadership or what you see?
So I wish I had more time, because I love that question and that subject. So one is, I think, point of view and experience make everything, right? So I grew up in South America from 0 to 12 years old, and my dad worked for an organization that had ties to the U.S. government, and I did kidnapping drills. Like, they tried to kidnap me twice as a kid.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we did drills in school where I would have ran to the soccer field and been evacuated in case of a coup. And, I still reverse park into most places, just in case of a hostage situation.
My man.
And so when I moved to this country at 12, I had paralyzing fear that we were going to have German Shepherds and 12-foot fences with barbed wire because people tried to kidnap me as a kid.
Right.
So my comprehension of like, I just have to outwork you guys and get money. Like this is the greatest place on earth. Because in other countries, like your last name, are you tied to the military or the political party, are what dictate your success rate.
Correct.
Right. And oh, by the way, if your competitors don't like you, they can actually pay the military to make you disappear.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God.
And so that's why I think you see 80% of self-made millionaires in this country are immigrants from other countries.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Who get here and go, wait, these are the rules of the game. I'm going to whoop all your asses. And so I think the version, like, and that's not a choice, right? Your perspective and your upbringing is your upbringing. But I think from reading a lot, when, a high performance coach can actually tie your behavior to an outcome that's very meaningful. For example, there was a study done on people who got triple bypasses, and the rate of being right back 2 years later was like 80%. It was something ridiculous. And the doctors had tested it by saying, hey, if you don't change your habits, you're going to die. And that created no tie-in emotionally. But they would bring in the daughter or the granddaughter to say, Grandpa, if you don't change, you're not going to walk me down the aisle.
Ooh.
And that instantly switched the behavior by like 90%.
Yeah.
So I think I think someone wants to want to do it themselves. But if you are in the leadership business, you just need to identify people's hopes and dreams and tie it to a very strong emotional behavior. And I tend to see that be the most efficient thing.
Love that. Such a great, we could go all day on just leadership and geek out with you. And I know we've got 30 seconds with you, so we're going to let you get out of here. But side note, if you do ever need security, I'm really good at that. Eli's got some muscle on him. You ever need two guys in eXp to travel with you wherever you go to keep you safe, and we can just kind of be flies on the wall with everything that you're doing and get a little sneak peek to some knowledge and some mentorship. We're the Boondock Saints for you, man. we're just two guys in your corner here to keep you safe, brother. But we're going to let you get out of here, man. We can't thank you enough for being on and being a part of what you're doing and just being the leader that you are, man. So super impressed after just getting some time with you and where your perspective comes from. So, man, we want to thank you so much for this.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate you guys. Reach out with anything you need.
Sounds great, Leo. We appreciate you, brother. We'll see you soon.
Thank you very much.
See ya.